United Nations, New York, September 19, 2025. The Iranian government has sharply denounced the reimposition of sanctions against it, escalating a long-running global standoff over its nuclear program. Speaking by telephone with Rafael Grossi, the director of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araqchi warned that mounting restrictions and external demands risk inflaming tensions across the region. Araqchi, who has become the central voice of Iran's diplomacy in this crisis, declared, "I reject any political action and any unfair pressure that could lead to an escalation of tensions." His words, broadcast on Iranian state television and confirmed by diplomatic sources, underscored Tehran's frustration with the latest moves by the United Nations Security Council. The Council had just voted to reimpose sweeping sanctions on Iran, citing alleged breaches of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, the landmark 2015 nuclear deal that once symbolized a rare triumph of multilateral diplomacy. Britain, France and Germany, all signatories of the accord, pushed forward the measure, insisting that Tehran had failed to uphold its commitments. The 2015 JCPOA was hailed at the time as a breakthrough. Images of diplomats smiling in Vienna, China's Wang Yi, Germany's Frank-Walter Steinmeier, Russia's Sergei Lavrov, the EU's Federica Mogherini, Iran's Mohammad Javad Zarif, and America's John Kerry captured a moment of extraordinary unity. The deal promised Iran sanctions relief in exchange for curbs on uranium enrichment and intrusive international inspections. But the fragile architecture of that deal collapsed in 2018, when then US President Donald Trump announced America's withdrawal. Standing at the White House, he declared in unmistakably direct terms, "I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. In a few moments, I will sign a presidential memorandum to begin reinstating US nuclear sanctions on the Iranian regime." That decision set off a chain of reactions. Iran gradually rolled back compliance, citing Washington's breach of commitments. European powers, though critical of Trump's move, struggled to maintain the deal's framework without American participation. By 2025, international patience had worn thin. During the latest debate at the UN, the United Kingdom's permanent representative Barbara Woodward delivered a sharp intervention. She emphasized London's conviction that Tehran had crossed red lines. Iran has not honored its obligations under the JCPOA, Woodward insisted, adding that the reimposition of sanctions was a necessary step to preserve global security and credibility of international agreements. For Britain and its allies, the stakes are both legal and geopolitical. Officials argue that Iran's uranium enrichment levels far exceed permissible limits, while inspections have been obstructed at critical facilities. Tehran, however, portrays a very different picture. For Araqchi and the leadership in Iran, the sanctions regime is seen not as a response to wrongdoing, but as an extension of what they call decades of Western hostility. Speaking firmly during his televised statement, Araqchi emphasized that Iran would not bow to coercion. Diplomatic veterans often recall the optimism of Vienna in July 2015. The images of Zarif and Kerry exchanging tense but hopeful words are now replayed with irony. At the time, negotiators believed they had diffused one of the Middle East's most dangerous flashpoints. But over the years, disputes over implementation, mutual accusations, and the shifting tides of domestic politics, particularly in Washington, eroded trust. The JCPOA became a casualty of changing administrations caught between Obama's pursuit of engagement and Trump's doctrine of maximum pressure. The return of sanctions in 2025 comes amid broader geopolitical turbulence. Russia and China, though parties to the JCPOA, have signaled opposition to the Western-driven move. Moscow warned that renewed sanctions risk pushing Iran closer into its orbit, while Beijing stressed that unilateral pressure cannot replace dialogue. Meanwhile, in Tehran, the government faces public discontent over economic hardship. Inflation, unemployment and shortages have fueled sporadic protests, though authorities have cracked down swiftly. Officials argue that sanctions, not domestic mismanagement, are the root cause. Diplomatic analysts say Araqchi's latest statement reflects Tehran's determination to avoid appearing weak. His emphasis on rejecting unfair pressure signals that Iran is prepared to absorb further punishment rather than concede under duress. Yet others caution that the rhetoric may conceal pragmatic flexibility. Behind closed doors, intermediaries from neutral states such as Switzerland and Oman continue to explore possible compromises. The question remains whether Western capitals are prepared to re-engage after doubling down on sanctions. The Natanz nuclear facility has become both a symbol and a battleground. Iranian state television often airs sweeping shots of its underground halls filled with advanced centrifuges. To Tehran, these images broadcast national pride and self-sufficiency. To Western intelligence agencies, they represent a looming threat if left unchecked. Experts note that the return of sanctions may accelerate Iran's nuclear progress rather than halt it. Without economic incentives, critics argue, Tehran has little reason to restrain itself. The United Nations Security Council session itself reflected deep divisions. Britain, France and Germany were resolute. Russia and China opposed the measure. Non-permanent members expressed unease about the precedent of reimposing sanctions without unanimous backing. Still, the resolution passed, underscoring the Western majority's determination to signal consequences for Iran's nuclear behaviour. Diplomats described heated debates in the chamber, with Iranian representatives lobbying furiously to block the outcome. Beyond the halls of power, ordinary Iranians remain the most affected. Sanctions restrict not only oil sales, but also access to medicines, banking systems, and international trade. Humanitarian organisations warn that civilians bear the brunt of geopolitical disputes. For Araqchi, invoking fairness is also an appeal to global public opinion. By emphasising the language of unfair pressure, Tehran seeks to portray itself as the aggrieved party in an unequal struggle. The crisis leaves the future uncertain. Analysts warn of potential escalation if Iran accelerates uranium enrichment in defiance of sanctions. Israel has long hinted at military options should diplomacy fail, while Gulf states fear regional instability. At the same time, some diplomats still believe in the possibility of a renewed framework. The precedent of the 2015 deal proves that adversaries can reach agreements under the right conditions. For now, however, the rhetoric remains sharp. Araqchi's insistence on rejecting pressure, Woodward's accusation of Iranian non-compliance, and Trump's historical withdrawal speech all serve as markers of a deepening divide. 10 years after the JCPOA's signing, the world finds itself back at a familiar crossroads. The promise of nuclear diplomacy has given way to sanctions, suspicion, and recrimination. The voices from Tehran, London, and Washington illustrate a cycle of hope and disappointment that has defined this dispute for decades. As Araqchi warned, any political action and any unfair pressure may only raise the stakes further. Whether the coming months bring renewed confrontation or a fragile path back to negotiation remains the unanswered question at the heart of the world's most enduring nuclear standoff.